Purple Daily with Mackey and Judd, Declan Goff producing, no relation to Jared Goff, who we covered in an episode of Kirk or Blank yesterday. You can always give us a 5-star review and a positive rating on Apple if that's where you listen to the podcast. It helps spread the word about the show. And also you can subscribe to our YouTube channel, youtube.com/scorenorth. So, gentlemen, let's start the show today by playing a clip from Chris Sims, noted mediocre backup NFL quarterback, son of Phil Sims, noted Super Bowl champion quarterback, right? And he has takes on where Kirk Cousins ranks among the 32 NFL starting quarterbacks.
But
let's play the
yeah,
clip.
that's why Kirk Cousins, to me, just outside the top 12, Mike, for a lot of the reasons that you've seen. Doesn't throw the ball great off of different platforms, not necessarily great when the pocket does collapse. He's got a little bit of an elongated motion, but still, with what he's asked to do, the ability to throw the ball on the run. And honestly, this is what I want to, like I was saying to Derek Carr, hey, let it rip, let it go. Kirk Cousins, I want to say, hey, you're a better athlete than you give yourself credit for. Learn how to hop around the pocket and avoid people and still make throws down the field. He can do that.
All right, so what are your guys' thoughts on Kirk Cousins, A, ranking 13th, and B, all of the things that Chris Sims said as criticisms about Kirk Cousins?
Well, this is actually Chris Sims, not just the starting quarterbacks, Phil Mackey, in the National Football League. This is his ranking of 40 quarterbacks. He starts at 40 and goes down, and just for a reference point, number 40 on his list is Tua. So Cousins actually moved up in Chris Sims' ranking from a year ago. He was 15th a year ago, 13th this year. He is now in front of Roethlisberger at 14. Tom Brady is 15. Drew Brees is 16, which I find to be very interesting. Your guy,
that's ridiculous.
Phillip Rivers is 17. Josh Allen is 18. Derek Carr is 19. And Garoppolo is 20. So just the reference point here is we've got some decent names behind Kirk Cousins.
So you're telling me, okay, and we can debate where Kirk should fall. You're telling me in a ranking of NFL quarterbacks that Phillip Rivers and Drew Brees are right next to each other right now?
Yes, and Brees in the Sims rankings. This is not me. I'm just telling you, I'm the messenger here. Brees fell from 10 to 16. Brady a year ago was 9th, and now he's 15th. And Roethlisberger, who missed most of last year because of injury, went from 6th to 14th. So Kirk Cousins is being slightly slighted here, but in that context, he's actually moved up. And what Sims said, so what Sims said, though, about Cousins to me, to touch on that, is a little bit too simplistic of just hop around in the pocket. Like, Cousins on designed rollouts and bootlegs is pretty good. And I think the Kubiak system used that to Kirk Cousins' strength in 2019. But when you say things like, well, just hop around there, that means that Cousins can feel pressure, which I contend he can't. So just to be like, well, avoid the pressure, man. Well, yeah, that'd be great. And if Kirk Cousins did that, if Kirk Cousins had that gear in Kirk Cousins' brain, first of all, he's a first-round draft pick. Second of all, he might be in the debate post-career to go to Canton and the Pro Football Hall of Fame, okay? So just to be like, well, yeah, man, if you just hopped around, it'd be better. Well, yes, it would be. The contention from me is Kirk Cousins doesn't have that gene, so you can't just say have that gene.
Right. So I think this leads to the theme of the show here today, which is there another level for Kirk Cousins? I think some of these criticisms are valid in that, like, he's just he kind of is who he is physically, and he's 32 years old. It's not like he's a 24-year-old who's still sort of surveying NFL defenses for the first time. So a lot of what you see with Kirk Cousins is what you're going to get at this age. But is there a next level for Kirk Cousins? I think that's something that the Vikings are trying to figure out, and it's something that they probably need from him if they want to make it to and win the first Super Bowl in franchise history. So Judd, when you think about a next level for Cousins, what does that look like for you? And is it feasible? Is it attainable?
It looks like just hop around, man. Hop around, feel pressure, which you can't do. No, I honestly think that Kirk Cousins and his coaches have gone a long way towards getting the most that they possibly can from Kirk. Now, if I give Kirk Cousins a Hall of Fame left tackle, a Hall of Fame left guard, a Hall of Fame running back, wide receivers, can Kirk Cousins' play go up? Yes, it can. But if I'm going to give Kirk Cousins what he currently has, which is, an offense that I think certainly has its strength and is no question run towards what Kirk Cousins does well. Do I think that just flat out the Kirk Cousins that we saw in 2019 can now report for training camp in 2020 and find a new gear and find things that he previously wasn't talented at doing and starts doing? My gut says absolutely not. Does it? But just to be clear, because I feel it needs to be made clear in every conversation, I don't think he's a bad quarterback. I think in a lot of ways, he's probably maximizing the talent that God gave him. I just don't think that you can go in your brain and be like, you know what I'm going to work on this year? Feeling blindside pressure, and I'm going to tackle that problem.
So I actually I disagree with I would say about half of what you just said, and so I do think there are certain things that he just isn't going to be able to add to his game, and the ability to feel pressure and to sort of strafe in the pocket left and right and back and forward. I mean, that's something that Tom Brady, we talk about Kirk Cousins immobility. Tom Brady is less mobile than a tree trunk, and that guy still finds a way to, in and out of little pockets within the pocket, find that spot, be able to keep your eyes down the field. Cousins has a little bit of a broken clock and a broken sensor there that I just don't think at age 32 you're gonna. So I agree with you on that. Mobility, he's not Russell Wilson. He's not even really Ryan Tannehill when it comes to mobility. He's not a guy that's gonna run for 80 yards in a game or rip off. He's not going to rip off a mad scramble behind the line of scrimmage and avoid pass rushers. So those are things that just like he is who he is. I also would even add to this list before I get to the things I do think he can get to the next level on leadership. I don't think he has the alpha, cool, calm, collected personality of a Peyton Manning, of an Aaron Rodgers, or a Russell Wilson. He's a little awkward. He's a little jittery. Like he's just, he's kind of an odd guy. He's more of a beta personality. And I think he's likable in some ways. I think you've seen some frustration from teammates in other ways, but he's not necessarily like the beacon for the locker room that some of these top quarterbacks tend to be. So those things you and I agree on. Next level to me includes two things, and I think he can accomplish these two things even with those flaws. I think winning more big games is part of the next level for Kirk Cousins. The road, winning opponents, primetime, playoffs. I mean, you can count on one hand how many big games he's won in his career that fit the things that I just mentioned. Like, how many, he had a big one against New Orleans last year, throws that dime to Adam Thielen 40 yards down the field. You're not going to do that every time. You're not going to go undefeated in your big games, but like, don't be winless in Monday Night Football. Don't have seasons in which you go 0-4 in prime time, right? Last year was better. They beat the Cowboys in prime time. They beat the Saints in a playoff game. So you started to see some evolution there. Big game Kirk, he's not going to be like Tom Brady, but can he be even just 50-50 in some of these games and give the Vikings a chance to do the second thing, which is next level for Kirk Cousins, getting hot for a stretch in January. The San Francisco game, I don't know if there's really anything the Vikings could have done to win that game in the playoffs because their offensive line just got smoked by a better defensive front and a better overall team. Mm-hmm. But getting hot for a stretch in January requires that you might have to rise up and just overcome some offensive line adversity. And you're not going to do it through mobility. So can you do it through other things? Can you do it through play calling? Can you do it through changing looks at the line of scrimmage? Like there's just things he's going to have to figure out. And I keep going back to the fact that if you look at the quarterbacks that have won Super Bowls in the last 20 years, Kirk Cousins is better than, not all of them certainly, but some of them. Like to me, he's better than Trent Dilfer. He's better than Brad Johnson. He's better than Joe Flacco. He's better than Eli Manning. And you might say, okay, well, Dilfer and Johnson had two of the best defenses of all time. And it literally could have been Judd Zulgad taking snaps and you would have won a Super Bowl with the Ravens in 2000. But with Joe Flacco and Eli Manning, I actually think Kirk Cousins, I know he's better than Joe Flacco. I think he's better than Eli. Like Eli had seasons where he threw 20 interceptions. And so if he can put it together in some of these big games and put it together for a hot stretch in January, that's the next level for me. And I think it's attainable. I wouldn't guarantee it. I wouldn't bet my life on it, but I think it's attainable.
The thing, and in Flacco's case, he just got incredibly hot. He just got so red hot during that playoff run. The Eli factor to me was he did have or does have that Manning gene of being able to slow things down when they're probably at their most hectic. I would tie in the Kirk cool point that you brought up, Phil, with the can he get hot and carry a team for a stretch of games, not in October or November, but January, and say, I think the lack of being the guy also makes it very hard to be that guy. And that doesn't mean that it's impossible, but the fact is I don't know that Kirk's teammates look at Kirk as a quarterback. I think they look at him as a talented athlete, probably in some ways, but I do think that lacking that it factor, which he does, he lacks something in the it factor.
Flacco lacks it too.
Well, right, and I guess the question is, can your defense play incredibly well and carry you, and then you get hot too? I wouldn't say no. I would say it's probably 90-10 percentage-wise against that. But I do think it's important to link in what you brought, which is he's never really going to be that guy. It then becomes very hard in January to say, okay, everybody shut up. I'm going to carry you, which is sort of what the greats can do. And yeah, if you put him on the 2000 Ravens or the Brad Johnson Buccaneers and now say, okay, this defense is literally, we're going to go back, 15 years in how the game was played, and this defense is going to carry you. That would be possible. I don't know if in today's National Football League that is a realistic thing, though, just because now the game itself is more so firmly towards offense and not what it was back then.
Right. Well, I going back to the Eli and the Joe Flacco thing, if those are the guys that we're sort of looking at and saying, all right, at no point were either one of those guys regarded as top 5 overall NFL quarterbacks. At no point. Maybe Eli a couple times borderline, but that's kind of where Kirk Cousins is at, right? Like Kirk, at his best, you can kind of see him like, oh man, he's kind of playing like a top 5 guy, but ultimately he's not. Like he's not a top 5 guy.
Right.
Eli wasn't top 5. Joe Flacco was nowhere near top 5. But they were both talented enough and good enough to ride the wave of a good defense and get hot at the right time, without being necessarily like great rah-rah alpha leadership guys. Like neither one of those guys. I'm not saying they weren't respected, but they weren't like, all right, everyone jump on my back.
Yeah, they weren't. Yeah,
guys.
I got you.
They're both more like pieces of cardboard, right? Like in like, I think Kirk has more of a personality than Joe Flacco, but I think that's the formula. I don't think you need a 2000 Ravens defense or a 2002 Buccaneers defense to win a Super Bowl with Kirk Cousins. Do you need a really good defense? Yes, but you'd say that about almost any Super Bowl. Like the Patriots aren't winning Super Bowls in years where their defense is garbage. So I think the model is 2011 Giants, 2007 Giants, 2012 Ravens, where you just need Kirk, flaws and all, to play at or near his best for a January stretch while your pass rush dominates. But that's the model.
Stefon Diggs is partially gone because Stefon Diggs, right or wrong, didn't have the faith that Kirk can do that. Like Stefon Diggs, I don't think that this is Stefon Diggs versus Kirk, and I hate Kirk, but I do think that the San Francisco game probably was the final straw in saying in the type of game that Phil you just laid out, that your best receiver essentially said, okay, you just can't do it. And that's very instructive.
Yeah, and the San Francisco game, like it's such a tough autopsy because you look at what Kirk did or didn't do in that game, and you say, all right, well, like what needs to happen for the Vikings to win this game? And ideally, your offensive line would just be better, and your quarterback would just have more time. But there's going to be games like that. I mean, the Seahawks have played games in the playoffs, and the Chiefs even, where the offensive line is getting smoked for a half. And what's the answer to it? And the answer is usually a guy that can escape pressure on his own and keep plays alive. And that's just like going back to the beginning of the episode here into what you're saying. That's one of those flaws. If you go back and look at that San Francisco game and say, all right, what are the things that could have happened here? Well, the offensive line could have been better. Well, it's a work in progress. The other thing that could have been done is your quarterback flushes out and keeps plays alive or runs for first downs and keeps the chains moving. And that's just not going to happen.
Well, and Kirk. I think in Diggs' mind, and Diggs, there's no question about it, is an outstanding player. I think in Stefon Diggs' mind, okay, it would have been tough, but you've got to trust me too. And you've got to make throws that might backfire. But the only way with the offensive line having its ass kicked like it was by the Niners, the only way in Stefon Diggs' mind that they were going to win that game was for Kirk Cousins probably to take chances, which might be disastrous, but guess what? They might be fruitful too. And Kirk's unwillingness to do that is probably sort of what makes Kirk Kirk. And it's probably what's going to keep him away from, oh my God, the Vikings just won a playoff game. Phil, I really think, and I could be proven wrong here, but I really think that Saints game is about as well as Kirk can do, and I don't think he can do it for a stretch of playoff games. Do I think he can do it in November for a stretch of games? We've seen it. Absolutely. You start those puppies at noon, and you start them in October. Those noon kickoffs, daylight outside, Kirk, bang, 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 bang. But you take it to January. You take it to January.
Unless it's Buffalo.
No, but I mean Buffalo now. He could, but you take it to January now. And can you get Kirk through one game? We saw it against the Saints. Absolutely. Defense played great. Can you get him through a package of games against playoff teams? I've got my doubts. But can I go back to Sims's rankings for 1 second?
Sure.
I sat down last night and started this exercise. And I got through approximately 7.
Oh, the glasses
The glasses are on.
The glasses are on. Hey, the notepad's out too. Right here. So I sat down last night and started the exercise of trying to rank quarterbacks, okay? So like, where would Kirk fall in my world? And you know what I found? I got through about 7 names, and the next tier of guys, I could, for the most part, put them in a hat, shake that hat up, pull them out, and be like, okay, cool.
Yes.
Mahomes,
I
1.
agree.
Lamar Jackson, I think right now, 2. And that could change, but right now. Russell Wilson in my top 7 for sure. Rodgers still there, maybe falling, but I'm not going to write him off completely yet. Deshaun Watson, absolutely love him, okay? I think he's got a bright future. I know he's been hurt at times, but he's in my top 7. Personally, Drew Brees, still there. I'm not dropping him to 15 to me.
Mm-hmm.
And I sort of forced Dak in, might be wrong, might be right, but I sort of forced Dak in, okay? But after that, I have, Cousins, I have Wentz, I have Tannehill coming off a great year. I don't know if he keeps that up. I personally have my doubts. I have Stafford, I have Brady, I have Garoppolo. The point being is, I got through about 6 or 7 and said, after that, to me, total crapshoot.
So if you get to 6 or 7, and you could make a case for Kirk Cousins being at or near the top of that next tier, isn't he then a fringe top 5 quarterback?
That's the thing.
Kind of.
But that's the conversation. And my initial inclination to answer your question is no. But the reality is, coming off the season that Kirk had, he is for sure, and a year ago, I did not have him as a top 10. But after the statistical season that he put together in 2019, I think it's very fair to say that he is for sure could be a top 10 guy, but it's also very easy to drop him out. That's my point. There's about 6 or 7 of these guys that I would say, okay, I would take him. But after that, I think it becomes, and this does not mean that they're not talented, I think it becomes incredibly a murky discussion.
Yeah. We will at some point here in the next week or two, we're going to do an episode about if there's 3 minutes on the clock and your team needs a touchdown, and you've got 1 timeout left. This is your last drive.
Tanner Morgan.
Where does Kirk rank on that list?
Tanner Morgan.
Dude, Tanner Morgan's a boss.
You know why he partially is? Because Bateman is a boss.
And Tyler Johnson was a boss.
Yeah, but Bateman, I'm telling you right now, I will stand by this. I think that Bateman is the best receiver in the state right now, including Thielen and Jefferson.
Wow.
He's incredible.
I think he will be at some point.
That's a hot take.
But if he entered the NFL right now, I'm still taking Thielen. But it's
dude.
It's
I
not
saw
a hot take.
He makes some Moss-like catches.
Yeah, he's going to be.
I don't know if Thielen does that.
Sure next year.
Anyway.
Yeah. Well, that's a wrap on this episode of Purple Daily. And if you've got thoughts on where you think Kirk Cousins ranks 1 through 40, or if you think he has another level, so to speak, drop us a line in the YouTube comment section, youtube.com/scorenorth. Thanks for hanging out.